Hello and welcome to Swatches Livestream number 87. Now we're going to be looking at some art challenge entries this time. And I'm going to come up here and actually unmute unmute Anna and welcome her to the stream. How you doing, Anna?
Hi everyone, good. How are you?
Okay, well, let us know, guys, if the audio's off or the video's off for any reason. We'll just take a minute here to make sure all the tech stuff is taken care of and run through some announcements, and then we'll start looking at some artwork. So, yeah, Anna again is joining us, and she is also out on the Facebook group and on the Discord. You can catch both of us out there. So yeah, big information if you haven't been around the channel before, or if you haven't been around in a while, then the Swatches Discord is up and going.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, like I don't know where that's coming from.
Sorry, I'm setting up the stream for myself.
Oh, okay. So we have the Swatches Discord. You can see the link there. That should be a good link. I set that one to not expire. And we've got a bunch of people out there. It's separated into rooms, whether you're looking for feedback or not looking for feedback and just want to share images, whether you're doing part of the art challenge, whether you're trying to share resources, all that sort of stuff is out there, including the art club. This is a new thing that Anna's been putting together, and this is just stuff for you guys to be studying on to improve your skills throughout the week. These will be focused on the fundamentals, going through all things like shadings, values, colors, compositions, and etc. But they are really good practical exercises to be doing during your week to improve. So do you want to talk a little bit about that and what you guys are working on currently? I can switch over and pull up some of the images from the art club that you had sent me.
Yeah, no problem. I try to make it really short. So Art Club, we are a study group, and we are trying to tackle some important topics in art together. And I function there a little bit as a guiding instance. So I will give you a topic, I will give you some information on that. Not all there is to know. For that, I give you some links and book recommendations. Not super fancy stuff, but where you get the most important information that we will need for Art Club, stuff that or materials that I used studying myself or still do. And yeah, might be well known for some people. For others, maybe there's some new stuff for them. And then I give out assignments, and we post our studies or assignments then on Discord, and you can also post it on Facebook. But at the moment, we are most actively working on Discord. And yeah, as you can see, we are having some analysis at the moment and some studies of pros and masters. And starting with this weekend, so I hope I can upload the new topic and the new assignments tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. We will start with the next topic that will be tackling lighting in art.
Okay.
And yeah, so if you still want to join, you are not too late. You can always start Art Club from the first one, from the first topic. If you like to, usually we will try to keep it weekly. But if you say, like, I don't know, you will watch this video here on Swatches in like about 3 weeks or so, and you hear about it the first time, it's no problem to jump in anytime. And I will keep all the files and explanations and assignments in the group, and basically like the old challenges that you can also tackle anytime.
Yes.
But if you want to do it together with the group, like up to date, then you should be fast and join our group on Discord.
Yeah, so go out there and check that out, guys. If you're not already part of some sort of art school, or you're in college, or you're taking some online workshop, these are the sort of things that you should be doing while you're also just doing pieces to build your portfolio.
One more thing.
Yeah.
One more thing. We even had an audio session. This week was the first one where we were just talking about our experiences. So everybody joined with their audio. And we had some talk, and it was about 2 hours or so, and they could ask questions, what they struggled with, what was weird to them, what they learned from all these things, and it was really fun. And I think I tried to keep it and have around, I don't know, Tuesday, Wednesday, always audio in our Hangout in the Discord group.
Okay. And will you be posting maybe an update on exactly when that will be if they want to catch it next time?
Yeah, I will always ask in the group when people are having the time, and then we make up a date there. But usually I think it's good to have it around Tuesday, Wednesday for most people.
Okay. I like that idea. All right, number 4, we want to look at Group 1 finals for next week. So we have 2 groups doing this particular challenge, 12 entries in each group. We've already looked at the concepts for Group 1, and then next week will be the finals for Group 1. This episode, we're just looking at the concepts for Group 2. Then also next week, because it will be the final for that group, we will be kicking off a new challenge. So if you like the challenges here, if you want to jump in, it will be something completely different next time. But next week, I will announce it during the Friday stream with the the tickets going on sale probably that next Saturday. Now I do have some stuff coming up. No wait, that's earlier in the day. No, I should be okay. I have some stuff coming up on a Friday a couple of weeks from now, but I don't think there'll be a problem because this will be earlier. All right, also, Patron links should be going out today after the stream. I was wanting to get those sent out before the stream today. I was just busy trying to get everything ready, so I am still planning on getting those sent out. So if you're a patron that was subscribed before the end of June, before July 1st, then if you're at the $20 or the $40 levels, you should be expecting a message to come out that will have links to the archive, the video archive, so you can go watch that stuff. Then for the $40 patrons, I will be including information about how to submit your image for the feedback. I am continually working on the illustration process video, which is the main reward for this, July's reward. And that should be coming out next week. It's moving along pretty well. I'm pretty happy with it so far. Of course, if you want to have a one-on-one video mentorship session with me, it is an hour long, and you can get details and schedule that at art-mentor.com. And of course, if you like the channel, please comment, like, and consider subscribing so that you don't forget about the channel in the future. All right, anything else I'm forgetting, or any information you want to toss in there, Anna, before we move on?
If not at the moment. when I come up with something, I'll let you know.
Okay.
But at the moment, all good.
All right, then we will jump over here. We do have a full lineup today. We had 12 tickets, and we had 12 entries. Most times somebody or another has something that comes up that keeps them, but we will have to be moving along here because we do have a full 12. This is actually Anna's image, who's here in chat, the guest. And,
oh gosh, we're starting with that one.
Well, yeah, alphabetically, your name's starts with an A.
Okay.
Go ahead and get it out of the way, right? So you didn't have any comments down here, but I assume that if you wanted to bring up any topics, talk us through it a little bit.
Yeah, so I had much fun designing the character and also finding a good pose. The pose was the most struggling for me because the description said he must be standing and he must be looking also very steady and a little bit, severe. I don't know. Like a cool pose. And it was a little bit hard for me to find a standing pose that I was happy with.
Yeah.
And if you look at my others, so the middle one looks a little bit more like he's not like he's dancing, but it didn't give me the kind of Planeswalker feel. It is going a little bit because it's such a high angle into the Legend of the Crypt direction. So I thought, no, not this one. And the third one, I stopped at some point. I didn't finish it up because I felt like this is more like a card that would be called like concentrating or gathering power or something like that. So I didn't feel it was like a Planeswalker pose, so I went with the first one. And I tried some different lightings, like him being backlit from the lightnings and having a warm front light. I probably go with that one, but I'm also playing with the idea of his arm being the only light source in the foreground and the background being pretty much dark, maybe having some lightnings also to give him some sharp edge lights. That is also why I didn't push far on the color studies, and it's looking all muddy because I didn't push through with the right value setting yet, so that gives me muddy colors there. But I wanted to just experiment a little bit with it. And for the others, just as a hint, what I did there was the first one is a complementary between blue and yellow. The second one I tried a with four colors. What was it called?
Rectangle or square?
Square color theme. And then I had a monologus. It was, or when you just have one color.
Oh, analogous. Yes.
Analogous. Yeah. So I tried different schemes and look what would be the best. And I'll probably go with either the complementary one, but this one feels a little bit cool for me, or a with four different colors. But I have to figure that out with the values first. So my question would be, are you okay with the pose and the composition in general? And how would you set up the value scheme here? And any other cool detail? You always have really creative ideas on what to put in backgrounds or clothings or whatever to make this a little bit more interesting. These would be my questions.
Yeah, I think you hit on an issue that practically everyone was having a problem with, which is posing a character that's not holding anything, and that's basically just standing there. I've had to do it a couple of times, and it's just kind of awkward to do. So in this case, you could even have him holding something as long as it's not a weapon. And that's the main thing. You don't want to give him a weapon. So, is he holding... You could have him holding a scroll, which could be, part of it. Or maybe he's draping I'm just saying if you want to go this direction, or somebody else. Kind of when you're stuck with this thing, but he doesn't have a weapon and you can't have that, then you could have him going through some action like tightening a belt or cinching that thing over his shoulder, or maybe he's pulling the cloak, off from around his leg, or you can have him doing some basic motion like that, or holding some innocuous item like a scroll. So you have some things like that, but in general, this is probably fine, which is you just showcasing the character. We're not really needing them in an action scene or something. So even though the pose is kind of straightforward, it's still acceptable because that's kind of what a Planeswalker image usually is. Value-wise, you got a lot of options here, and we need to determine whether he's standing out because he's lighter or standing out because he's darker. And it can be both as long as you are running a gradient opposite of that for the background. So maybe real quick, we'll kind of look at what that might look like.
Yeah, I tried that a little bit in some of the value studies where I have like his upper part, body and face being lighter than the background and his legs being darker than the background. But yeah, but it would be cool if you gave me some tips. Showed me how you do it.
Yeah, I'm going to jump off of what you said. So you were thinking maybe the arm is the primary light, in the foreground. Okay, yeah, and that would be one of my general inclinations as well. Is if we've already established that there is some actual thing in the scene that is a light source, then let's try to use that, maximize that potential, and see if it gets us somewhere that we like to be. If not, we'll look at kind of plan B. So there, I just made an outline, and I'm going to try a overlay layer here. And this is just super fast. I'm just trying to establish something really quick. I'm going to default.
Yeah, problem is also if I want to make him like have white and golden clothes only without any other color, and you have a dark value in it, like for example the trousers, if I want to make them yellow or orangey, then they will get muddy pretty easily because there is no such dark value in these colors. So it will then have to get into more brown, reddish tone, and then it's not fitting the description anymore, is it?
Right. Oh, hang on. I think I did that backwards. I need to grab this, and then grab the reverse, and then grab... Yeah, so we want to keep all of his clothes as either white or gold. We don't really need other ones. You know, it might be like a slightly off-white, maybe not a pristine white, or maybe not a pristine gold, but it needs to be in that. We don't really want to be getting into browns and, you know, greens and other stuff, unless it's just some small little design detail, but nothing major. Let's do a vivid light, I think is what the other one was. So this is just kind of showing, like, what if you did complementary values, where essentially you've got it going light to dark, left to right on the character, because of the light source from his arm. Then you had more light in the background on the right side, so that you're putting the light background against the dark side of him, and then the dark background against the light side of him. And that would be a really, you know, basic way of handling a value scheme, so that everything has something to contrast against, and you just have to have limited values, you know, that sort of fit that. And you can go either way with that. You can inverse those, like we can do this, and then inverse this, and then inverse that after you deselect it.
But then I should take out the light that's coming from the side, right? Because then it's again another light, and it will get a little bit too
from the right side.
All the lights. Yeah, I have from our right side. I have light
no, I
coming.
would keep that in there as a fill light. So it would be half as bright as his arm light, and it would have some probably lesser colored. Like I assume the gold light from his arm could be pretty heavily gold colored. I would do it that way. Then have the cool light from the lightning in the sky hitting that other side, and so you have this wonderful cool light that's a little duller on one side, that is still helping to bring out the forms. Then you have that much stronger gold light on the other side that is drawing your attention to the focal point of the character and helping to bring out all the forms on that side. That would be an initial thought of how to handle it, and I can't think of any reason that really wouldn't work. I think that could work pretty well. Otherwise, if you're not wanting to do it that way, then we could just treat him as a unit, which is because he's in white and gold, and both of those can be pretty bright values. Overall, he could be just generally lighter in tone than all of the background. I mean, all the background could be just kind of dark and stormy compared to his bright tones.
A little bit like the last value study, where I tried to push the white, because I was thinking also about it's a white card, And I played a little bit of Magic, and most white cards are more of a lighter value, mostly. And I was a little bit insecure whether a dark, because there's a Stormy Sky in your description, whether that would fit the white card in the end. So it was kind of a struggle for me.
Yeah, I think that value could also really work. It would definitely increase the holy monk aspect and the kind of just the brightness of him. I think it would work just fine if we maybe also see a couple of bits of light peeking out and hitting a couple of other little spots in the background. Like just some of that mid-ground, but not maybe the far background is getting a little light. Kind of tossed in some of those buildings or statues that you have back there. Yeah, and that would really work if he overall was a bit lighter. Now, he doesn't have to be a lot brighter, because you're also switching that he's warm versus a cooler background. And when you have a distinct color change, you don't need as much value change. So you kind of do some of one and some of the other, and it's plenty. So I'd be thinking that. A couple of other notes I had, which was I'd be looking at changing the background a bit. I think the lower part is pretty nice. You're establishing like a village and some statues and stuff. But let's stretch the mountains up. And I did... we got this photo down here that you had of some mountain references. And I just... I stretched those up, basically. And just ran those up a lot further. Well, this, whatever size this is at, is like exactly not the size I need to fit on this screen. It's either too little or too big. I'll just scale it down manually. There we go. So yeah, I would consider just stretching them out and taking it from realistic to fantasy. And say they're not tall; they're really tall, and they disappear off the top into your cloud layer, and then you can still have the lightning coming down there.
Yeah, so cool.
That would be a thought. And then I was looking at your pose. If you were trying to go for this isn't an adjustment that you'd want to look at. And your pose for the man on the left side, and then the clay guy on the right side, they've got more of a chest dipping. Like their chest isn't rounded out. Because they're throwing their weight into their hips, which actually curves the back. Not forwards, but concave. And so that's what I was kind of looking at this. Like if you have that change, I'm flipping it on the screen and you might be able to see it. Now you got more of the dip with the hips kind of pushed out comparatively. And so it's this really relaxed sort of pose. If you were looking at trying to capture a bit more of that, I think we have to push it that direction.
Yeah, I see.
Some of the other design...
Yeah, so I will put his tattoo later on. So I wanted to have a lot of suns inside it because of Thousand Dawn. That's why I went for the sun design everywhere on his stuff. And I thought about his shoulder thingy being the one that is kind of producing or projecting the arm. So that is why it will be made out of metal, except for all the other stuff that's just cloth. So, and in the background, the figures will also have this sun symbol. So basically that maybe his background could be that his temple gave him that armor to give him back an arm, because he's a very good monk of this place. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just tried to get a little bit of storytelling into it. That's why I went for that.
Yeah, okay, now, coming up with a little history to it, that's good. I like when artists do that. They think of a little back history to try to give them some design direction with it. But the whole metal piece thing isn't working quite so well. because the shapes don't fit Asian. They don't fit anything else. Like, when I'm looking at it, I'm almost thinking, like, what if it was actually one of these faces? You know, and this sort of face that has, like, some sort of sun design that kind of comes out from underneath it. And so it mimics back to the giant sculptures in the back, and the statues. And or if it's even slightly like a kabuki mask, then that would tie into being a little more Asian.
Yeah.
And not quite just this kind of arbitrary metal shape.
It started as being elongated part of the sun, these beam lights, I don't know, and then turned out to be like this, and I kind of lost that. It was looking more like a spider, and that's why I had to pull back and came up with this shape. But yeah, that's not good thought into that.
I don't know.
I admit.
Let's see. I was thinking that might be an issue, is that sun design is really close to the actual MTG sun design that they use on white cards.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. And so we can't get very close to the actual design. So if we can come up with some variation of that's still sun derived, that's fine.
Yeah. I thought I had as a reference the one from from Tangled, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but it was just in my head. I didn't take out the reference properly. Yeah.
Just check that. And then the weighted plate that he has, it's just kind of odd because it's like right in the middle of his body, and it's just this perfect circle that's almost right in the middle of the image. That's right in the middle of his body.
Yeah, I see.
And it's framed on every side with a piece of fabric.
Yeah.
So we want to reposition that. Also, just as a dude, I can't imagine trying to walk with that located where it's located.
It's the William Headed problem.
Unless he's a eunuch, that's probably not a good placement.
William, did you hear that?
So having them there, fine, but let's throw it off to either side and maybe overlap a couple of them so they don't have a perfect shape. You know, they overlay each other maybe a little bit. And I can see that he carries these weights as part of his training. It makes him stronger, kind of the Goku weighted things. Yeah. I like the flowing of the cloth. That feels good. I like the inclusion of some of the village back there. That's good. I am curious about maybe turning one of the heads a little bit, because each head of the statues is like the exact same, but just mirrored.
They are mirrored.
Yeah. You didn't think I'd notice.
I was lazy.
No, so the placement, I would, if possible, let's do 3 of them. So I have like.
Don't put the third one. It's already so crammed.
Well, it could just be a light one that's in the background. I'll kind of put it in where, you can just have one kind of hidden behind that heel back there. But we just want to make it so it's not completely symmetrical around him. It's a little odd that way. But yeah, I think that ought to get you going. If anything else, maybe some sort of design or stitching or something on the edges, some of the cloth.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. But I assume that you could get to that when you're going to be doing the tattoos and.
Yeah, I'll see.
Yeah. No, I do the same thing. I'll copy and paste just to block it in. But I also know that sometimes unless you make a mental note to go back and fix it, you don't actually go back and fix it.
Yeah.
So you just got to point it out so you don't forget about it.
Yep.
All right. Any final issues?
No, we already spent a lot of time on this one. We must get on.
All right, we will get on.
But thank you very much. Very much,
Yes.
really helpful. I'm looking forward to working on this further.
Okay, Christina is up next. Christina Meyer. She says, lowered the viewing angle of the figure in the final sketch to bring down the horizon to make more room for the Stormy Sky. In this sketch, I'm not sure which one she's referring to, but okay. I had gotten confused with the high altitude of the scene, but I believe... hiccup. The horizon would still be the viewer's eye level, even if they're standing on Mount Everest. Yes, the horizon is always eye level if you're on a terrestrial body like Earth. In which this case, it actually feels like my eye level is lower than what you have indicated. It feels like I'm really looking up at him quite a bit, which makes me feel like the horizon ought to be more around here. You could actually put it pretty low and I'd still buy it. Yeah, I would put it below that halfway vertical, so that he's taking up the primary half of the image. Yeah. You can do that, and then we would just make it so that the mountains still can come up to here, but they're going to recede back down to that level. Yeah. I'm not sure about the shape of this rock. It's not really doing a lot for me. I'd almost go with the pinnacle thing, where it's a small rock, and then we get to see more of the vista down here, right? Instead of a lot more of that rock, and then we can actually see clouds and stuff down here. We can do more with that than the surface of that rock. Yeah. All right. What are some of your thoughts here on this one, Anna?
Yeah, so I like that she already had some thought about the direction of the light. I see that she put some thought into that and really tried to make it consistent over the character. What I think is she should, maybe as a first step, check a little bit the anatomy, like get maybe a model with where you can see the muscles or so, and just do a layer over it, pick a very good visible color like a red, and try to figure out like the general, most important, you don't have to paint every muscle, but the main anatomy, because there are some things off, and also try to understand what the forms of each of, for example, the legs, they don't have form much to me. His left leg is also in a little bit difficult angle, and this comes because she didn't probably see how the leg is working in her reference, because it's all black, and yeah, it looks a little bit off to me. The arm is a little bit tiny. So sometimes if you have, I think it's a 3D model that she referenced here, it can be sometimes tricky because you think, oh, it's from a 3D model, it must be totally accurate. But I have the same with my portrait studio. They have in these programs a specific camera lens. And sometimes when you have such foreshortened poses, it looks in the end a little bit off. It's not correct completely. That is why to check again on your own with anatomy or a real person that is close to what you want to achieve, like you did with the photograph. Paint over it the anatomy, try to understand what's underneath that t-shirt and put it into your painting. And I think this is how you can improve, and also get reference for the clothes, because one can tell that you did these out of your head, how you think folds are shaping or forming, and a good reference for that would help a lot. And the last thing I say is, I'm not so happy with the foreground rock because it's such a diagonal line suddenly in a piece that is not having any other stuff to support this kind of composition. So maybe because it's a very centered composition, having him stand on top of one of these really pointy mountains would be a nice thing to have. Like he's really on top of one of these mountains and doing his exercises there. So make it a little bit more of a special place for this pose, because it's a meditative training pose. And if you would just be there on some edge that is not having any interesting on it, I don't feel like it's the best place for him to train and get the energies flowing, so to speak. So change something with that. These would be my 3 main concerns with this one.
Yeah, it actually reminded me, this pose right here is from the character Lee from Figurosity.com. I know because I've referenced the same character before. And if you do sign up for Figurosity, it's very inexpensive. I think it's $30 a year. It's like $3 a month. Then you actually do have the ability to turn on a muscles-only version of that model. And so I do suggest go ahead and spend the $3 or $5 for 1 month or whatever it is, and get access to that version of it. And then that'll really just help you have a better understanding of the anatomy and what's going on there. And so yeah, the stone, let's change the stone. And it's also run into kind of the issue that this stone diagonal is mimicked by the diagonal of the river, which is just kind of odd. So whether you make it the top of a stone, or if there's a bunch of stone pillars, just some sort of old kind of
cool
stone pillars that are sticking up as part of, I don't know, a training ground or prayer pillars, I don't really care. But he maybe is standing up on top of one of those. And the other ones might be kind of broken and they have, some vines growing up on moss or something. That'd be kind of cool. So yeah, the anatomy is off a little bit here or there. But if we're talking about the general direction and pose, I'm happy with that. That looks good. Same thing Anna says, like that. The idea of the flowing fabric and that sort of thing, good. But now is where we go find some actual references. Because fabric has a very particular behavior of how it bends and folds. And so make sure you go look at that. I had sketched out before stream kind of what I was thinking with the fabric. Like in this golden piece right here, we probably want that out here, actually floating off this direction. And for these, let's see if we can make them a little more complicated. Fabric doesn't usually have these perfect kind of cartoon folds to them. They're a little more messy. They're a little more wrinkly. And so going and looking at some real fabric about that and kind of putting that in there. Same thing with this piece going around his chest. Letting it on that far side actually hover out a little bit. One of the best things that I was told about drawing fabric like this is you draw it as if the fabric is underwater. If you really start thinking about the gravity, you're going to draw it very realistically. It's going to just kind of hang there. But you draw it as if it was underwater. And if you think about it that way, it lets you get the folds and be lighter with them and let them bend in more interesting ways. So that would be a little advice on kind of how to mentally approach that. Also had, I kind of mocked in what, if you move the horizon down a long ways, we do want to darken that sky up behind that arm, because that arm is not showing up. That's a main issue with this character, is making sure his magical arm is visible. So we want to make sure that that background behind it is dark enough that that golden arm can show up. A lot for Christina to work on there. I do like the direction, and look forward to seeing how you continue with it. Up next is Clint Missy. I can tell he's a cool dude. He's got a cool name. And And says, the one displayed on main concept using Value Study 2's lighting with Color Study 2's. Originally I had a design for the Night Elf I wanted to use, but I continued with the composition. Realized the clothing did not match well with the intended composition, so I had to completely redesign her when I worked on the compositions. Not sure if this happens often or not. Yeah, it has been times when you definitely have to alter the character design a bit to accommodate what the actual pose is. Not all poses work for all character design. The main thing here is I feel like we're getting too far away from the fact that this is supposed to be a hunt. Unless I'm not reading something. I mean, it looks like she's... Yeah, you even got a photograph of a lady holding a mirror and looking at her reflection. So I'm confused about that because I don't know where that ties into a hunt at all.
No, I think he just missed a little bit some parts of the outline, or maybe it's the first time he's joining, so maybe he thought he can bend a little bit the rules or do just something around that what's written there. I don't know, maybe we didn't make that enough clear when we explained how the challenges work. But this is also the first thing I thought, like why is she sitting there and looking in the mirror? So I just recommend go back to one of the other compositions you had in mind.
Yes.
They look more like a hunt, and work on these further.
Yeah, that's what made me think that Clint must have read the brief, must have had an idea of what it was about, because it feels like these other ones are following that. And even in a thumbnail pose, they have pretty good dynamic posing. I feel there's some movement. I feel some foreshortening. And thing is, it's active. I feel like the character is doing something. And what we have now is a completely passive scene. She's not moving. She's not doing anything. And everything's just flat to the camera, which flattens out the scene. The main feedback is we've got to make sure that we're not differing too far from the intended subject. And this is something that comes up fairly often with art challenges, which is, where is the creativity? And when you're doing a challenge, when you're doing a commission, being able to determine where that creativity is very important. Determining where you are constrained, or where the parameters are that you do have to meet, is also important. So, in this case, it has to be clear that she's in the woods, that she is a night elf, or an elf. I can be a version of elf, I don't really care. But it has to be clear that she's on some kind of hunt. What she's hunting, that's up to you. What weapon she's using a hunt with, that's up to you. Whether she's hunting alone or whether she's hunting with some sort of animal companion, that's up to you. Whether it's daytime or nighttime, that's up to you. So there's lots of creativity there, but it has to fit within that framework. I'm going to say just go back to one of the other compositions, probably 1 or 3. I'm having a little harder time making out what's going on with 2.
I think she's having a bow downwards and in the direction to us, the viewer, and she's a little bit hunching forward. But I also think 1 or 3 would be the best. I'm a huge fan of bow fighters for elves, but of course number 3 could work well as also. So maybe we have 1 or 2 hints for composition 3, an idea. Mr. Creative, can you give some cool tips maybe what could be there in composition 3 to improve?
What could be where?
In composition 3, if she went for that one, as far as we can make out, she's having a big sword, and yeah, she's foreshortened pretty much. And do you have any tips maybe that what she could, what he could implement in that piece to improve composition 3 maybe?
We can actually pull out a little bit on this. There's plenty of the character in the scene. This is one we actually could zoom out slightly. I don't know if it's a sword or a bow. Probably want to get a little bend in the elbow either way. And I'm not sure which direction we're looking. Like if we're looking up or down, or I guess we're looking up at her. Not sure.
Yeah, I think it's this riot kind of splash art angle where you look a little bit up at her and her arm is coming toward us.
I think we're going to get this perspective thing where the trees are going to be kind of making this angle, which could work good because she's sort of countering that angle with her body. And then she's got her blade there. I'm not sure what that hand is doing. Maybe conjuring magic.
I think it's holding another weapon.
Yeah, it's a little rough. He didn't intend for that to really be critiqued much, so he didn't clean it up very much. He could be holding an extra dagger or a sword, or doing this dual wielding thing. That could work. Watch the angle of the wrist. I mean, it looks like she's holding the blade out quite a bit. I suppose it could work. If you're going to hold it out, I'd probably do it this way and have the hand tilting like that. And then having that other blade across there. Yeah, I think that could work. Just something like that, and make sure that we've got, shapes of the trees in the background. They don't have to be like really well done or anything.
Yeah, but that's the thing that happened to many people. I saw a lot of such errors from posts from others, and that's why I posted again on Facebook group with a reminder of what was written there in the challenge for the monk, because many people uploaded stuff with really colored clothes and stuff like that, and you really, really must read what your client is asking for. And if he wants white and golden clothes, then you can't make it red and purple. So you must read it. And maybe, as Clint already told us a couple of times, sometimes he has a suggestion where he was maybe not told directly what to go for, and he's sending in a suggestion, how about this and that? Maybe you got just a 3D model that is not that detailed. Like with the, what was it? This black-skinned, white-armored guy. I don't know, it was also for Magic, wasn't it? Where you said you had to invent some of the details because there was the 3D model not so high-res that you could make out everything.
Oh, yeah.
And in that case, it's okay to do a little bit something that nobody asked for. But if it says it's a standing figure, it is... with a stormy sky, it is with white clothes, you can't change these things. So that is why you really must read the...
Yeah, guys, and if you're unsure, if you feel like you have a good idea and you might want to take it in a different direction, just send me a message and ask me. All right, that's how it works between you and the art director too. They're on your team. They're there literally to help you make a better image. And so if you've got a question, shoot it to me and just, hey, I was thinking about what if I can include, this extra color on the guy's character, or can I have her doing this or that? Hey, let me know. I'll shoot your message back and let you know whether that fits in the genre or not. I do want to call out the colors here. I do like the color choices. I think especially color, actually they can all work. And going with those magentas and the blues, kind of the cyan tones, I think that all works excellent for this image. So I'll be going with that. I like the environment reference there. Go off of that. Continue with that. All right, got to move on. Bunch of other ones to look at. wrong.
Yeah, just to say, it's not bad or something, the painting itself, because he's in chat, so we can talk to him directly. But yeah, we recommend to go back a step and try with something that is more fitting to the description.
Clint, I'll tell you, we all do it. We all do it. We all get an idea in our head, and we start running with it, and we forget to double check. I've done it, right? I'm sure Anna's done it probably at some point, or if she hasn't, she will at some point.
Yeah.
We all do it at some point, and so don't feel bad about it. It's just, hey, that's the lesson you got for today. I've had that lesson before. Anna's had that lesson before. So just chalk it up. Hey, that's one lesson you don't have to learn again necessarily. So you just go on. But yeah, this
that
one
can be
is
quite frustrating for someone working in the industry. So when I got my commissions, and I had really cool ideas, and they sent it in, they're like, no, but we wanted it to be like this and that, and then I must pull back and say, okay, I have cool ideas, but they just won't fit this card that I have to illustrate, so I must go with whatever they want. And didn't you say that in the video for this magic piece with the little fairy thingy, with the that you had to change some things that you liked before, but then they wanted it differently, and you had to just go for whatever they wanted from magic?
Oh yeah, I mean that happens. Sometimes you have what is a good idea for your image, but you will be requested to change it because of how it fits into the overall set and lore. And so, it might be great if you could do this particular thing or use this color, add, this or that. Or say, man, it would be so great if there were these floating mountains behind him and the waterfalls. And then the art director's going to go, there are no floating mountains on this plane. I'm sorry, you just cannot put it. As cool as that is, you can't do it. They don't exist in this. So yeah, the art will always be limited by the framework of the thing that it's having to fulfill.
Yeah.
This one is up, Jonathan, and no comments down here, but he's got a couple examples of compositions that he did. I think he mentioned on Facebook that he was running out of time and just did a real quick mashup for this final that we have here in the center, and didn't necessarily have time to put in the value studies or the color studies. But he does have this excellent, it's probably DAZ 3D, I'm guessing, of the model of the character there with the lighting on it.
Probably.
I do like the direction that is giving us. A lot of good information from that. And it looks like he did a sort of paint over of the model in order to arrive at this. And so definitely I have some ideas. Blender. Okay. Yeah, Blender would get you something like that.
Oh, yeah.
And I like the references for the character's face down here. We've got two awesome martial artists and actors there. All right, what caught your eye here, Anna? Let's see if it's the same thing that I was looking at.
Yeah, I must admit I saw it just before the stream started because I didn't realize there was one missing. So I didn't have a longer look at it. For now, I like the composition. This is my very first impression. It's really balanced and harmonious, and that fits the theme. I'd see to make also the front clothes hanging in front of his leg also be a little bit be moved by the wind, even if it's heavier. It looks a little bit stiff because everything is floating and flying, and this is pretty straight to the ground. A little bit like you have in composition too. Get some, or in one even is even moving also a little bit. What else? Yeah, keep the description in mind. White, gold clothes. This is number one. And Stormy Sky, I don't know whether you are going for it. It looks a little bit like a friendly sky to me at the moment. So try to fit the description. And yeah, that's basically the first things from me. Maybe enhancing the shadow light areas, make them a little bit more apart from each other, that you get more crisp edges. Also, to look in the references that you have of Magic, there's a lot of very strong lights versus strong shadows, not using black, but strong shadows, just to make this piece stand out more. I would have to make it black and white to check the values. I feel like the values all over the painting are pretty much the same, but I would have to check that in Photoshop to make that sure. So keep in mind each layer, or what was it called, like foreground, midground, background, each plane has its own value range, and try to work on that. Yep, that's it from me.
Yeah, I'm feeling like you probably didn't have the time or take the time to do the values, but absolutely, the value plane's probably going to be handled the same way that you see on each of these MTG images over here, which is essentially darkest planes first, and then it gets lighter, progressively lighter, and more limited in value as it goes away from you. The character, Anna's right. He's coming across basically browns and beiges. And no, this guy's white and gold. That's what he wears, white and gold. Mainly gold with white, or mainly white with gold, or however you want to break it down. But we've got to make sure that however we color it, that is coming through and it's not becoming this grayish brown. Additionally, this is a time when the art director is going to tell you we cannot have that symbol. It's either a real world symbol or it's too similar to a real world symbol. And this is MTG. And so you can't have anything that mimics any real world symbology or language on anything in MTG. So we've got to get rid of that.
That's cool. I never heard of that.
Oh yeah. There's not really any room for
For a piece like this, would you get the symbols that you, or can you design them by yourself if it's a completely new character, new
if it's a
plane,
completely new character, if you were literally the character design on it, I mean, you would come up with maybe some kind of symbol if he had one, but I don't think he should probably have one because it's a little too superhero-y. It's the big symbol across the chest. You know, MTG doesn't do that. Yeah, you don't. You don't have Chandra with a big fire symbol on her chest, and Jace with a big water symbol on his chest.
Why not?
Yeah, it just gets too comic book like. So
yeah, of course.
Let's get that, and then also we want to make sure that we're getting more of a monk feel from it. He's got like some little tendrily fabrics, but he's got this studded belt. And studded leather on his feet, legs, but he's not really coming across monk-like. And we want to make sure that we are. Did I put that over there? No. We want to make sure that we're getting more of that feeling. Again, this is a set of references right here of a lot of different kind of fantasy monks, and I can look at. Besides the ones on the faces, I can look at any of the full body ones, and I immediately get that. I know what class they are. I know what kind of character that is. They're very fabric heavy with metal accents, and they have particular kinds of shapes that you can wrap the body in to get that sort of impression. And some of it is really tightly wrapped, like the lady character down here. You know, the more form-fitting on the top, the form-fitting wrappings on the arms, and the rest of it kind of loose because that follows the motions and the movement that they would need. Other ones like this guy, you know, everything's pretty loose. Same thing for the guy on the top. So we're looking at this and we're kind of saying, where is it? Where is that monk aspect to it? Can we wrap the fabric differently? Instead of like one studded leather belt, you know, what are these guys doing? Okay, well, they're getting an entire piece of fabric, and they put an entire piece of fabric over top of that, and there's a leather thing underneath that, and then there's leather studs on that. And so there's always like multiple levels of fabrics and leathers put together in order to create that thing. So assuming we're going to spend some more time on that, because the design of the character on this is as important as the overall rendering, as important as the whole scene. And if the character isn't engaging, in fact, if the character design cannot stand along with Chandra and Jace and the other Planeswalkers, if he looks like a B class, nobody wants to play him. He has to have that sort of attention put into his design. Going to the pose and stuff, a couple of things we want to look at is the chest is basically flat to us right now. It just feels like it's on our eye level. Whereas if we look at the reference, we can tell that we're really looking up at it. And so it goes, right now it looks like kind of a cube that's almost completely flat here. But if you look at the reference, it's more like this. We're looking up severely at it, right? Down there. And so we want to get more of that feeling, and I did an adjustment there. And so we can see how that rounds the chest up, and then it also pushes the hood down. So if we're looking up at someone, we don't see the hood behind their head. It goes back too far. We want to look at that, and we're particularly looking at this angle over here. We're trying to make him more heroic. We're looking at that angle, the really wide, there are obliques? Is it the obliques? Or that's directly on your side? The lats. Yeah, the lats.
Obliques are under your armpit, the ones.
Yeah. And so we're looking at this angle there, and then that angle change here. And you can see how that difference, and also thinking about the form and how this chest is rounding like this as we're looking up at it. And the chest itself is doing this sort of thing, right? And you can see that difference there too. Then we want to make sure the same effect of fabric, what Anna mentioned, which is like this front piece of fabric needs to be blowing or bending in some fashion to follow the rest of the scene. Yep. No, that was it. That was the main things. So we'll just call it there. Next is Carly Walker. Open that up. Okay, Carly says, halfway through I realized he could not have a staff. And you actually noticed it before you sent it in, though.
We all wanted the staff, and you forbid it, Clint. We love staffs.
Yes, I know.
I also wanted. I had like 1,000 different poses in my head, and they were all with the staff, and I was like, Clint, why did you do this to me?
Can you have a magic staff?
Yeah, or a walking stick at least.
Yeah, nobody even said that. Can you have a walking stick?
It was a hard. This was the real challenge for us, Clint. Not the painting, not the color, anything. It was finding a pose for a month.
It was just a pose challenge.
Just pose challenge.
Okay, well, Carly, I like a lot of the stuff that's going on here. Distinct, different concepts for the compositions up there. And I like the very simple backgrounds that you threw on them to kind of give a placement to those. For the one that you have, I'm not sure the value scheme you're going with. I did an adjustment to the value scheme. We'll look at that in a minute. Of maybe how we could handle that, because right now he just sort of blends into the background. So assuming that we make a value difference between him and that background, we need him to show up. I like the sort of drapeness, a lot of the fabrics, the hair pulled back. You give him a little facial hair. I think gives him some nice character. That's cool. We also need to flip the scene because it needs to be his right arm. That's the magic arm, but that's easy enough to do. So we'll just assume that you can flip the scene. We'll look at my stuff here in a second, but let me get Anna's thoughts to you guys. What are you thinking here, Anna?
Yeah, so I think it's a really cool character. I like the general design he's going here for. He's looking at us very, very angrily, but I also can recall he should be looking slightly off camera, wasn't it? How you put it in the description? So he's not supposed to look directly at us, is it?
No, he should not be looking directly at us.
Yeah, so I feel like he's looking at us. He shouldn't be looking
Really,
at
you
us.
do?
Guys, yeah. Don't you think? He's looking at us. Come on. Don't you see that? I think he's totally looking at us.
No, when I zoom up, his eyeballs are clearly going the other way.
Oh, let me zoom in too. Okay, that direction. But this way he looks like he's avoiding us too much. Like he's a little bit ashamed or something.
Now he's ashamed.
Maybe screaming at him or something. Maybe not that much. Maybe not that much.
Anna says changes, just redo it all. Redo it.
No. I think he just had to struggle because he had to suddenly delete the stuff and couldn't find a good pose. Because I think the composition 1 and 3 are very dynamic standing poses for him. And maybe, like Clint said earlier, replace the stuff by some other thing that he can hold, like a scroll or so, and go back to one of these, because they're much more dynamic. At the moment, he looks there like a child that got fit in clothes that he doesn't like, and he's just standing there with his hands away from his body, and he's like, "Can I put it off now?" So, did you have a look, Mom? Can I put it off now? So this is what I imagine with that pose. So it's also the Hulk pose, but he's very, very slim. So this is why I didn't have the Hulk image this time. Yeah, in general, he's really, really slim. I think he's more bulky in his other designs. Maybe it was also a time issue here. So I think a monk fighting with his fist should have quite good muscle. For a character.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think you could bulk him up a little bit. He doesn't necessarily need to be like Thor, but
his chest is a bit flat.
A little bit more, yeah.
So putting his feet, as you have in composition 1 and 3, more further from each other, having the upper body being a little bit more dynamic, either, I don't know, to the left, to the right, something like that would already help this quite a lot.
Yeah, I'm with you there. The leg poses in 1 and 3 feel more dynamic. That's definitely something. And broaden the shoulders out would do a lot.
Yeah, and lighting and value. But I think it was really a time issue because he realized so late, oh my gosh, I can't go for any of these because I need to find a new pose. It's probably a time issue for him because he's doing really nice fast renderings on the color studies. I think they look good. I personally have trouble doing color studies without making them getting muddy or anything like that. So I think he has more skill than he's showing us here at the moment because of time issues. That's what I have the impression of.
Yeah, that's why on some of the stuff I'm not going to mention it. I just feel like they're going to be able to address it. Yeah, the issue is, I was kind of thinking about the fabric, like you feel like it's like just too big. And so something you can do, which is what some of the other monks do, which is some of it's tied very tight, and then some of it's very loose. And I would be taking that idea that the stuff around his waist, let it be nice and cinched up. And then the part like that comes from all this waist stuff, now that can be loose, that goes around his shoulder. And that can hang out and be kind of sagging out so that he can have plenty of movement. But if you keep the stuff all around his waist actually cinched in quite a bit, then it allows you to play up that V to his upper body and make him feel more athletic. Right? It gives you more of that shape. And then when it gets lower, then it gets kind of what you see there, which is it kind of blossoms out a bit because he's just got layers of stuff. out there. And then when it gets back down to his, the lower body, again, kind of what you have on these other ones, which is it gets nice and broad down here, but then it gets cinched up tight again around his calves. And so you've got this loose, tight sort of balance between the different fabrics and stuff. Explains a lot besides the anatomy and gesture we're most focused on, but that doesn't mean those skills should be neglected. He shows how to take your fundamentals into practice. Oh, okay, you're not actually talking to me. Okay, you just... Anytime you say the word swatches in the comments, it flags it. Okay, a couple of other things I was looking at. I did like the value that if you just brighten the background up, and then the character is darker, and then put a little fill light on him, then that shows up pretty good. And we'll assume that you can deal with the pose and stuff. And if you throw that light on over there, and you have that light coming in. But the issue here then is that you've got this mountain that basically runs right down the side of the character. And that's not ideal. It'd be much better to have like a mountain coming down here and then having a mountain on that side. And so he's sort of in between them. But either way, we have to move it, or you have the mountain over there. But we don't necessarily want it running right, kind of parallel to his body there. What else do I have? Oh yeah, this is an idea that if you have the wind coming this direction, then everything on this side, you basically want to keep simple curves, simple lines. But then everything on the opposite side, you want more curvy. So the hair is going to have crazy shapes on that side, but smooth on the other side. And the fabric will blow off on this side. And so that's just the dynamic is, it's kind of like straight or smooth on one side, and the other side is like that. Mm-hmm. Let's see. Making sure you're applying wind to all of this stuff. Get some motions out of that. Jonathan, thank you very much for the advice. Even if my heart bleeds because I have to remove the rework. Yeah, I mean it was a nice symbol. It just doesn't fit MTG, and that's what this is about. Any tips on painting white clothes in shadow? Yes, white will take on whatever the color of the secondary light source is. In this case, whatever the color of the sky is, that is the color that the white clothes will be. So if this is a warm light back here, then this is probably going to be a cool sky, and the clothes will take on the color of the sky. Because white is neutral. It will adopt the color of any light that hits it, and since the sky is the only light that's hitting it, unless you want to treat the arm as a brighter light source, in which case it will take on the color of the light source of the arm, which is some variation of gold, white, yellow, yeah. All right, Curly, thank you for the entry. I think you're in a good place. Oh, also, I like these down here. The little tree, this sort of thing down here. Those are nice. Let's see some of that. Let's see some little trees and stuff. And some of the little spires coming off the mountain. Madao is up next. Anna, do you have a chance to look at this one?
Let me open it. Yes, I did. So, shall I start?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So, you can see Madao had quite a bunch of reference for his piece, what I think is really, really good. And he even set up the scene in a 3D program and tried to render it with different lighting and also props within it. So that's cool. And yeah, I like the general design with the very thick robe. It's a typical Asian monk thing to have the thick robe. and also some other detail. The very first thing that was a little bit odd to me is that the flying cloth is having this bulb shape directly above his head. And I think you could make it more flying around his body and part of it being hidden by the bodies to get a little bit more of a sense for depth. And overlapping shapes are always a good thing to have there. And because for now it looks a little bit like you could lift him up like a little handle or something. It looks like he's having a handle attached to him. And that just makes a weird shape and a weird reading, also if you zoom out. So I'd reconsider that. And yeah, else some detail for the boat. I can't quite make out what the boat will be made of. Will it be tree trunks, or
I think he's going with bamboo.
Bamboo, but bamboo does not shape like that. So it doesn't, it's always straight. That's specific about bamboo. So you would have to make pieces that are bound together to get that shape. So it can't be one bamboo that is having a shape like that. So keep that in mind. And then, yeah, you must decide on some lighting. For the value studies, you went there for something different than we would like to have in a value study. So the value study, you should go for one design, one composition, and try out different lighting, direction, different colors of the clothes, so the different brightnesses of the clothes, not colors, different brightnesses of clothes and background and skin and whatever. Set this up with different lighting direction, and different light sources. What we're doing in art club at the moment, basically. So these kind of studies, and what he did here is not quite leading us to that goal that we want to achieve at the end with the value study. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, the cloth is maybe a little too perfect. That's floating around his head. I'd be looking at changing that. I would definitely need a reference. I'm not sure how they latch those boats together or what their constructions are. So I'm going to assume that they will go take a look at that and work that out.
There is one at the bottom right, but really tiny.
Yeah, I can't make it out too well.
Yeah, so tiny.
Having some sort of lantern or something on it does make sense. That might be nice. Yeah. And something else in the water can be good as well. Whether it's even just some little rocks sticking up by the shoreline to just break up some of the big shape. That can be nice. Other things I was looking at is the overall pose. I think you said here, can't figure out why my pose doesn't translate well. And I was reworking that a bit to try to get an idea of how that might be improved. And so what I came up with is that... Oh no, wrong letter. What I came up with is looking at what he was doing. One of the issues with these models, the 3D models like you have here, is that they don't actually have a sense of weight. They have human proportions, but they don't have a sense of gravity. They don't have to hold themselves up in a natural way. Actually, I think your Value Study 3 has a really nice rhythm to it, which this one doesn't have. And so I was looking at the pose and I'm thinking, where is his weight? Right? Where is he putting his weight? I think he's putting his weight on the back foot because the front foot's doing this like toe touch thing, right? And he's like waiting on the back foot, which means that wherever this touches has to be directly underneath his neck, because your center mass the weight of your body, you will always support yourself under your neck. That's where your head is. That's where you have to support your weight. And so that leg has to come back to this point. Even if it's the ball of his foot, in which case his heel goes back here, it has to support the weight there so that this leg can be out further. And then he also has this leaning back thing. Again, same thing with Anna's. She had a reference that did this, which is the body actually does this concave. It's not the chest out. You don't do chest out with, like, I stood in that pose to see if it works. You don't do chest out while you're on your back foot with your front foot forward. It's not natural. It's difficult and awkward to pose that way. This is one of the reasons I recommend always try to get in the pose of the model to see what works. In this case, we need to have him leaning back into the pose like this dude is over here in the reference. And so we've got to have him kind of laying back. I'm also looking at the shoulder tilt, because you use your shoulders and your arms to balance your weight depending on what your legs are doing. Again, got to stand in pose to figure it out, which means that this shoulder is higher to offset the weight going on that other leg. So those things being accounted for, I kind of reworked it to being a bit more like this. We can kind of go through it. One is moving that rope over so that it's better once you move the rest. That arm goes up and extended out a little bit. That leg stretches a bit further because he has no weight on him. He doesn't need to keep it very close. That leg has to go up under him a lot to get under where his head will be. That arm can move over a bit because he's laying his chest back. So you can see the difference there, that now he's got the weight on that back foot down here, and that arm can actually push out a little bit because the chest is further back. This arm extends in order to keep this flow a little nicer. Then that can stretch out a little further there. So it's a bunch of little tweaky stuff, but it can add up to being a slightly more natural pose. And with the cloth, it just feels odd for it to be going that direction, just kind of balance-wise. We expect it to be more behind him once you rework that. Okay, the other thing is, and I think we have a couple of entries this way, which is you guys are putting armor all over the magic arm, which is odd. Because the magic arm is the one visual thing that makes him completely different than any other person.
Yeah. Again, description. Right arm, Clint said. His right arm.
The right arm is the magic one. I mean, you can see it in Color Study 2 and 1, a little less than 3. But then you put plates all over the shoulder. You put bracers on the forearm. You put like some sort of thing, bracelet around the wrist. And so you're covering up this one iconic thing about this character. So we want to really minimize that. I understand you put a bracelet on or a wrap a bandage or something like that. But we don't want to cover up this unique thing about the character. So we want to make sure that we're having that a bit more visible. All right. Any last thoughts on this one?
No, I think that sums it up quite well.
Okay, we'll move on then. Michaela, but you said it might be different pronunciation?
Maybe she's German and she's called Michaela.
Michaela. That does have a fancier sound to it. Please don't hold back and point out as much as you see fit. Yeah, I did a little work on this. We can look at that in a minute. But general impression is I really like it. I think there are a lot of things going well with this image, and I think the feedback on this one will be more about how to just get what you already have and make it a little more realistic, make it a little more interesting, and not really doing a lot of major rework to the scene. How did you take it, Anna?
Yeah, same, totally the
Yeah.
same for me. So just really, really tiny things that I would take into consideration. So the very first thing that might be not the most major thing, but the first thing that hit me in this painting was his very charming and friendly face. So I think it's good to have a nice character, but I didn't look at so many Planewalker cards, but usually they look pretty badass and a little bit grim or concentrated, or like they're really these guys are not playing games.
Mm-hmm.
And he's super gentle. It might be a character design thing that you say, okay, you have a Planeswalker that is like the bright, cheery, nice guy. But I'd just try to play around with that and having a little bit more look like, oh, what's his name in the style direction? I forgot. The Planeswalker in her style direction. He's also from Magic. Can you recall? Did you paint?
Which
No, you
one?
didn't paint him yet. In the style direction, art inspiration window.
I can pull
his
it
name.
up. I can't remember which one I put in there.
I don't know. But he is more of a grim guy.
Johnny? The lion dude?
We're talking about Michaela's piece, aren't we? And she has in the style direction.
In her image here.
Yeah.
Is that Tamari? Is that Phil's name?
I don't know, but he's having a more severe face. The second and third thing.
I only draw for the game. I don't play it. Come on, jeez.
But maybe you have drawn that character already and can recall his name. I don't know. I didn't see a card of your art with him yet, but maybe you have, and it's just not released yet because it's set 21 or something. So the one thing is a little bit the anatomy of his upper body. It might be because he wanted it to look more wobbly because we are looking through his arm, but I feel like his rib cage is a little bit too wide around where the ethereal arm is atop, and it is a little bit wobbly and things like that. And also his necklace doesn't feel like it's sitting on top of his, what's this area called, around the neck. So the lower part is good, but the upper part looks a little bit straight and not following the shape of his body. And for the last is, I'm not so sure about the background figure. It feels a little bit squeezed in, and maybe a different placing for that could be cooler, but I'm not sure about that one. But that's it from me for now. Or maybe his chest, also the shadows on his chest look like he is having super strong muscle strains, and that makes him look a little bit creepier, I'd say. Not pronounce his muscles that much, I'd say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. I think that's good feedback, Anna. I don't really have an issue if he's... I normally don't see a Planeswalker being smiling. I might ease it back, emotion-wise, to more like contented, less just happy. So it's that slight change. It's slightly pulled back on the expression. He's at peace. He's content. I am with you with the rib cage. The general upper body, shoulders, collarbone, rib cage, that feels like it's maybe a little skewed at some point. So let's make sure that we find some good references. If you don't have some, I assume you don't have all of them here. But if you do need some, like I'm thinking you're going to get different shapes there with the where the chest has to bend up to that arm, and then I think you're going to find the waist could probably be thinner there. I'm going to have this thing, yeah. So I'll double check the anatomy underneath it all and see if you can't get that cleared up a little bit. The overall color scheme, I think, is working pretty well. I do some colors here that I'm going to suggest some changes. The golden arm works as far as like how bright it is, how it's sort of affecting things. See if you can add some sort of extra to it, any kind of extra design on it, some little light traces that come off of it. Anything along that line would be kind of nice. With the fabric is one of those things we do want to go find some references for. I went out and grabbed a piece of white fabric that was fluttery and skewed it and fit it on here and just put a mask on it. And so that can be helpful if you want to get something to get you going. If you're not sure like how to get started, then you can do that and be like, okay, well, that's not exactly what I want, but I have an idea of how I can get it to fold now that'll be more realistic than what I did have. I keep turning off the wrong layer. So that would be nice. Then with the character up here with the lighting and the color, we can get some more color out of the character. Particularly on the top, where we can get some cooler tones. And then I would treat this other light as a much stronger light. Like, whatever this light hits, it just goes white. It's just, boom, bright. Because we're compensating for the shadows. If we're operating a camera, we'd say we're exposing for the shadows instead of exposing for the light. And so everything in the light basically gets blown out, which allows this to be a balanced light source for the scene. Then we can get some more cool light up on the face, on the upward facing planes, get more of that cool light, especially towards the top. As it gets further down, that weakens because we're going to let the gold light become stronger towards the bottom. Then with that bright light coming through, we're going to get that back lighting through the ear, and that ear could really warm up, get some beautiful colors from that. We could maybe get some more of the gold light kind of hitting on the upper part of the eyebrows, you know, that sort of thing too, depending on how strong you want that. But if we do the lighting this way, it does give us the opportunity to actually darken up the background slightly, and we get a better sense of that light. We'd feel that light hitting him because it would be more contrast there. So this sort of thing. And we can simplify the shadows there instead of trying to get the collarbone on the top of the muscle and stuff. We can just simplify that into something a bit more like this. Right. And that expands out the color because right now it's kind of just getting light and dark version of that same kind of fleshy peach tone. And so this gives us a little warm and cool balance in there. I also did a little adjustment on the knee to kind of just going over getting a bit more of a gold render. I felt like you would probably be able to with the skills that you've shown in the rest of it, but maybe other people would be interested in, you know, how to get like a basic flat and then turning that into more of a gold feel. So I like what you've done to start it with, which is you've treated it more like a duller object. It's not particularly shiny. And you've drawn it in well, and you've done more of a just basic light shadow pattern over the whole thing. And that's a great way to do it because it immediately establishes the form of the object. And then you come in, and after that, you can add in little characteristics that make it feel more gold. Which would be anytime that the gold is reflecting on itself, it gets extra warm. It gets extra orangey. And so you see that on the areas here because they're reflecting from the lower areas, the inside of the lip, where it bounces the light back up on itself and it increases the heat of that color. And then particularly on the edges, we're looking at having a high amount of specular light and highlights off of those corners. And so adding that there, and then don't be afraid to also come in and put in some of your dull, like browns and grays, because the gold's not perfect, assuming he's out there in the weather. And this can just allow there to be a little difference. So some of it's, you can turn it on and off. You can see that there's like gray patches that just keep it from feeling too perfect. And that sort of approach can be applied to the different gold pieces around on the design. Okay.
For your information, Clint is super good with drawing and painting materials, and he's putting together a whole course only on materials at the moment. So stay tuned, there's coming really good content for you guys.
So I'm working on that. It'll still be a ways off, but stick around on the group. I'll let you know how that's progressing. And we'll probably have some exercises actually very similar to this, because gold is one of the topics. We go over several different kinds of metal, like dark iron, shiny silver type metal, gold, and some other stuff. So, yeah, good stuff. I'm going to leave it there.
Can I ask you a question, because it was in the chat, and I also wondered, what about the Stormy Sky in this piece?
Stormy Sky, that's one of the reasons I was thinking you could actually darken this. We're not in an angle where we can even see the sky. So we could just let this kind of be getting darker back up behind them. I'll let that light be kind of hitting them. And we can even indicate almost that there's rain coming down behind there. But it's that sort of rain with light beams coming through some of it. So. And I like the color up here on him, but you could even get maybe a little darker, a little more desaturated for the background. Just make it feel maybe like there's a bit more of a storm feel back there, but he's catching some light from where he is. That makes sense. And yeah, I think that would be a better direction. It kind of balances it out. You still have some color, you still have some light hitting him, but the background you can actually tone down a bit, and it makes him pop out a little more. Good question.
Thank you, Will. For the question, I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nicole is up. Nope. A little lag there. Okay, Nicole says, spent most of my time designing Ashran and the composition. The idea is that his tattooed arm, he powers up the ethereal arm. Golden sunlight is peeking through the storm clouds, casting blue shadows. Would love to hear your thoughts on how to push it to the next level. The mid-ground mountain on the right has a small water stream, which you'll find a reference for. Okay. I think there is a lot of good stuff going on here. Would you kick off some ideas for us, Anna?
Yeah. So I think the designing phase went really well for you. There's a lot of very different layers that you implemented, and I like that. About the pose, I was a little bit unsure. I see that you wanted him to empower the arm. I read it in your comment, but I felt like when you zoom out, to be honest, it looks a little bit like he was, what is it called, Clint, nibbling on your fingers.
Oh yeah.
Like when you're insecure and you're like standing there nibbling a little bit on your fingertips, and this is what it looks to me then. And empowering your arm, you would probably stretch out the ethereal arm and then have a really tense hand that is like summoning something on top of on top of that ethereal arm. I think that pose would read better as you're doing something with that arm or empowering it, and then having some glowy light coming out of your hand with the tattoos, and becoming part of the arm or something, of the ethereal arm. So this way it would read better. And he's also having his toes outwards, angled outwards, and then his shoulders are a little bit sagging to the front. So he looks, to me, pretty insecure and not as he's supposed to be, like steady and epic, I'd say.
Yeah.
So I would work mostly on the pose. Also, the ethereal arm is super covered. If you think about it, an ethereal arm that is already something unworldly, you don't need that much protection of this arm. You would probably protect the one that is still healthy, but not so much the one that is already just existing out of energy. So I had that armor on top because I was thinking it's projecting, that this is projecting the arm, that armor. But there's no need to protect an ethereal arm that you can easily produce with the other hand. So there's no much sense. It doesn't make sense to me so much. I don't read him much as Asian yet because of his super thick beard, I'd say. I don't know why, but for me, you get a better Asian look when he has a little bit less face hair. Yeah,
beard?
Beard.
Facial
in
hair?
general.
Yeah.
Facial hair, yeah. And the hair is also, it is close to what you described, but you said it is bound backwards to a big spray of hair and not hanging down and having a little bit as a ponytail, and the rest is like open or so. So it doesn't fit directly the description. Also, his clothes are not entirely white and gold. For example, the trousers aren't. Yeah, and the lighting direction is not super clear to me. Maybe, and I didn't have, to be honest, a look at the value studies. But I also don't see huge differences when it comes to lighting and lighting direction. What do you think? Value study 1, is it his arm being the main light source, or what do you think then? I don't see much differences going on here. It's hard for me to tell.
I think he's changing like which mountains are shaded, but the character doesn't seem to change all that much. I think overall it's probably too shiny. That's why I was kind of messing here with seeing if we could shadow those back mountains and get more of the light. And it looks like maybe there's some sort of shelf there between the mountains, or where the waterfall is coming off. So you have like a lake or something that's right along this area. And so maybe the water could be, the light could be hitting there, then on some of this area to the left. But then the rest of it, let's go ahead and have it more in shadow. We don't need all of the background to be sunny. Like, he can be on a sunny spot, and that's okay. In which case, we actually need this. We want to make sure that that feels like it is sunny. And then this can be a lot lighter, right? Something that can be shadowed, most of that. So we have a couple of spots there that have light, but that's probably going to be more engaging than putting so much light in the background, because we actually have so much more light in the background than we actually have on him. And you're going to be getting so much color from everything back there because of that. So let's cut down on that a bit. And yeah, I'm with you. I was doing some change there previously, trying to get a bit more of the heroic form out of the body. that he's very wide right now. And if you look at the Planeswalkers, like they usually have a pretty tight waist that makes their shoulders look broader. So let's also do the remove most of the armor there on that arm. The arm itself is cool, man. We don't need to put armor on it. Like if you want a shoulder piece, okay, cool. You want a little hand piece, okay, cool. But we don't need to put armor all over the thing that's like the coolest thing about him. It'd really be like, you know, getting Winter Soldier from Marvel, and he has an awesome metal arm, and then just giving him a long sleeve shirt to wear all the time. Like, it's Winter Soldier. He's got a freaking metal arm. Why is he wearing a long sleeve all the time? We want to see that thing, right? So it's the same sort of thing. The hand pose, I'm not really getting. Yeah, I'm with Anna. Like, if he's going to be powering up his arm, like maybe he has his arm outstretched and he has his other hand kind of doing this sort of thing, and you see these runes going around it as the power sort of, you know, is amplified around the arm, and you see these sparks going between his fingers and his other arm. That's powering up an arm. Right now, it just feels like I kept looking like I can't tell what he's holding. I can't tell what he's, you know, got his fingers on. Because it doesn't really read. So we want to change that pose. Either it's very clear that he's managing the power on his arm or something, or he's holding and manipulating something. And pose-wise, yeah, it's a very it's like a very everyman pose. So we want to push that to be a bit more heroic with the chest coming out. Like I did a change here. Right now it just goes straight like this. We're, you know, heroic. We want to have that curvature to the chest. We want this to curve up around the body because he's got his chest out, right? And the same thing, the overall pose needs to be more like this. The legs are spread out further. The chest is out further. Right? Doing this sort of thing. Maybe he has his arm down. Whatever you decide to do with the arm. The hair is kind of a split. Yeah, because we have the hair coming up here on the top, but then we also have all the hair coming behind him. I'm not sure what the hair is doing in the back to give us that. I think I'll kind of let it go. The main thing with the rest of the design is that we're using a lot of dark browns and leathers, and it doesn't really come across as gold. It just comes across as beige. So we want to make sure it's white and it's gold, and it's very much more that way than it is any other colors. And he's far more fabric-based than he is armor-based. The idea is that, you know, he's too quick and he's too good at what he does to actually be hit. So why do you need armor? Then composition-wise, it's not going to be a big change, but we do need to make a change compositionally because the image is almost just divided in half. It's like the side without the character and the side with the character. And you almost never want to divide your image in half, perfectly in half. So we need to get that character, we need to be able to move him over so that he's pushing that line over more. Right, and he's not going to just be sitting right there in the middle. How's that sound to you, Anna?
Yeah, I think that is already looking much better. Have we talked about the Stormy Sky thing again? Because by now it looks pretty bright still in the background. So maybe having the background more dark and the character only be lit. Like I try to maybe also pull off in my piece. Might be also a good decision here.
Yeah, that's what I mentioned as well, which is let's just have that light maybe catching the mid mountain range and then catching his, but all that background stuff can just go into shadow and have heavy clouds over it. And that would allow essentially what you're going to get is a balance where, oh no, wrong layer. All of this is going to be darker and cooler, all back here. And then all of him is going to be warmer and brighter and lighter because of the white fabric and the warmer light hitting him. Right? And so that is going to be a very simple dynamic sort of value and lighting difference that'll work. Very similar to what you have there. Okay, more to look at. Let's go ahead and close that one up. Nicole, as well as everyone else, remember you can post your images out in the groups in order to continue to get feedback during now till the final. And up next is Sean. Says, I haven't moved on to color yet. I want to make sure my values and compositions are solid first. Any advice on pushing the shapes or design as well as values would be greatly appreciated. This one it's kind of got me in an odd place because I love what you're doing with a lot of your shapes. I love a lot of the stylized shapes that you are using. They have such great feeling to them. They have such great almost attitude to the shapes, but it's also not Magic the Gathering. The shape language feels almost more like a what's his name, Tartovsky, that does Samurai Jack, where you've got these sort of flowy, lyrical, exaggerated shapes. And it's actually closer to that than being MTG. So if we are going to go more the MTG route, then we've got to get these shapes and find a lot more natural, a bit more nuanced versions of them. But the character design's fairly simple, but it also comes across as who he is, except for the staff. Another staff wielder here. What was some of your things that you were thinking of? And I'll come back to a couple of other thoughts I had.
Yeah, so for me it was the same. I like the style, but it's very, very stylized. I don't know, it reminds me, I just can't come up what artist I'm reminded of, but there are definitely pro artists using this kind of shape language. Maybe it's going into like a modern television kid show or Disney or something. So if somebody finds it a good reference, also you can let us know. So it is a good thing, and it's really clear and clean and worked well. But I have to say the same, because also the style direction reference that you gave us is a Leeson Riot painting that is semi-realistic to very close to realism. So for fantasy art, they're really, really close. Maybe the lighting is a lot of fantasy often, but like anatomy, materials and stuff is usually pretty close to realism. And if you really want to go for that and just could not do it yet because of your skill set, then it's a different kind of feedback that I'd give you than when you would say, okay, I want to do a more stylized thing. So that's what makes it a little bit hard for me to say, do this, do that. If you want to go for more direction like our Lee Sin, I'd say get more references. Don't exaggerate your shapes that much. More subtle design and shapes. So you are really going nearly into the Warcraft way of designing shapes, like really super exaggerated triangle shape for the upper body. And get more realistic photos and references, not only 3D models. to get back to that amount of realism for this piece. For also the clothes, get references there. I like the pose. He's holding a staff. I don't know what Clint thinks about that. He's using it to support himself. It could be like a walking stick, but I don't know whether it breaks the rules or not. It's up to Clint to decide. And I think it's a cool idea to have his eyes glow, but I'd probably not do it as much with also dropping down out of the eyes and going back and glowing out. And maybe even not having both eyes glowing. So we were talking once about some design ideas, and Clint had the idea to have maybe the opposite side of the where the ethereal arm is, on the other side having just an eye glowing golden or something like that. Could be a cool design idea. So I think that both eyes are super much glowing, like in the Lysin one, is not fitting in this piece at the moment. Or you are doing it too strongly, because Lysin has it, but it's much more fainter. And it's very prominent because he has such a dark face, and then this is really, really opaque that is coming out of his eyes, and that's throwing me off also a little bit at that point. Yeah. So for lighting direction, maybe think about a fill light, either have his arm being the other light source, or some skylight coming down on him, or anything like that. And the rim light is not consistent all over the body by now, so I'd get a reference, or think about the form and experiment with that a little bit more. These are my thoughts.
Good thoughts. I was just thinking maybe we could expand it. He might have like a laser gun or something. Yeah, packing.
What is going there?
Like a missile launcher.
Yeah, I must say I have the stream only on my mobile because I don't want my Skype to die again like last time. So it's really tiny for me. So I don't see well what you have there.
All right.
At the moment, it looks
no
for me
missile
like
launchers.
He's holding a mechanical. What is it? Sage. What is it called in English? Chainsaw.
Oh,
That's
yes.
what I see. That's what I see from here. But it's super tiny for me. Yeah, chainsaw.
Yeah, I was thinking, like, even if you wanted to have a series of statues, I was looking at a book of The Art of Spirited Away from Miyazaki. And, and throughout that movie, there was a series of little shrine statues. And, maybe he's walking up and he just has his hand out, touching one of the little statues. And that would be kind of interesting. I mean, like I was doing like a little toad statue here, but you could, make it any kind of like animal or face or whatever, and give a little context to the scene. So something like that could be working in the place of staff. And it's sort of what I was doing here is just getting those exaggerated shapes and finding more realistic ways of doing it, thinking about how the folds, it comes out from the belt area, then it would have a little bend there, because you're going to have a little excess so you can move, and just the weight of the fabric and more realistic folds to it. The eyes, I don't have an issue with the eyes glowing. I don't have an issue with some light trails coming off of the eyes, but we do want to make it a bit more subtle, a little smaller, a little less intense.
Maybe less opaque even a little bit.
Yeah. Then he has the white coming down from the eyes. I think that's one of the things that sort of gets me, though, is it almost, from a small view, it almost looks like he has vertical white pupils. Like vertical white eyes like this. And so unless we can tone those down, just make them gold, Maybe not make them glow as bright as the rest of it, so it doesn't give that pupil impression. Otherwise, I love the shapes. I think the pose is working. And the head is on the small side. It's probably coming from the stylistic approach. But if we're getting a bit more natural anatomy to it, the head is getting small because we're looking at his foot like being down there. And so we probably got to get his head, maybe up to 20% bigger. It's got to be more in that range. And then that would actually proportion out his upper body so that it doesn't look maybe too large. Because right now it looks large, but I think it's because the head is just a little small. So let's say that we get that sorted out. Some of this fabric, I don't know if you're treating it dark or whether it's just in shadow. If it's in shadow, that's fine, but let's make sure that we're not getting to using browns and greens and that sort of stuff on the fabrics. Now, it could be like old gold that's kind of like toned down a bit. It's just been muddied. If you want it weathered, now that's something else. You can have some weathered clothes. That's okay. But let's just not make it necessarily straight browns that way. Actually, the floating islands, rocks back here, I'm good with. You want to leave those there? Leave them there. That's cool. This is a great place to have silhouettes, some good silhouettes of trees. Not necessarily just little fuzzy shapes on the edges like we have in the photos. See if we can get some nice, clear little silhouettes of some trees on there, or maybe even some off of your floating rocks. It'd be cool. Yeah, no, I'm happy with the direction it's going. It's just getting this and combining it with some good realistic references in order to take it further that direction. All right, we got to keep moving. We're taking already. Oh, I accidentally threw somebody away. There we go. We're already 2 hours in. Okay, next up is Ty. I assume that's pronounced Ty. Starting with the idea that his search for knowledge, he sacrificed his right arm. He must really, really want him some knowledge. To gain an ethereal arm that allows him to absorb ancient sacred mantras and to save them as tattoos on his left arm. My refs were mainly to help me fill the character and come up with the sketch. I will now search for refs specifically for this piece now that I'm feeling good about the sketch, and FYI, I obviously don't know left from right. Yeah, another one where the arms are probably reversed. The biggest issue here is what we ran into with the other image, which is this is just, it's just departing too far from the brief. It's departing too far from, maybe more than that, it's departing too far from a Planeswalker image. This looks like a spell card. This looks like, enhanced mantra. Some spell card that you cast and it shows a powered up monk, summoning down lightning to do an attack. This isn't what you see in a Planeswalker card. And this, when I glance at it, I don't think monk at all. I think wizard, mage, something on that line. So we've got to make sure that we're not getting too far away from that context. And we also have to look at what do Planeswalker cards look like? How are they arranged? How are they laid out? Full figure. We need to see the guy's full figure. And then also compositionally, the composition should be driven by the image direction, what the image is about. So the image is about the character. That means we want to take most of the real estate of the image to tell the character. And right now, there's a lot of the image that's not character. Like, you can basically knock out all of that. It doesn't have character in it. Most of the image is not about the character. It's about the scene. And this is actually just writing about this for the Patreon thing, which is framing. How you frame your image, how you frame your character. Framing changes context, right? If you crop something so that it's this close, it's not about the environment. It's about the person. It's not even about the person. It's about the person's emotion. It's about their thoughts. It's about their feelings. When you pull it out to here, it's about the person. And if you pull it out further to what you have, it now becomes not about the person, it becomes about the person's relationship to the environment. And you pull it out even further, it becomes about the environment, even though there's a person in it. The person becomes a context for the environment. You pull it out even further, it's about the environment, and the character becomes a prop, the same way that a rock or a bicycle is. So how you frame your character, especially if it's a character scene, changes the context of what that is. It goes from their emotion, to their thoughts, to them as a person, to them in a situation, to their relationship to the environment, and right now we're too far out. So we've got to do a couple of things that is going back to the image outline of what the scene is about, which is he's not a magic wielder. It's never mentioned that he's a magic wielder. He has an ethereal arm. That's all that's mentioned. So we don't want him channeling lightning and this sort of thing. He has some glowing lights that come off of his arm. Okay. Glowy eyes. Okay. But we don't want him manifesting magic because he's not a magic wielder. So we've got to get rid of that. And then we also want to make sure that we're framing it the same way, which is full figure, centered, basically standing. I know that you want to be creative. I know, right? Because you're an artist. That's what we do. All right. But again, it's where's the box of creativity? You've got to. This is a practice of how to be creative within confines. I do love the action that you're able to get out. I love the flowing fabrics. I love that you're pushing with this high contrast with the lighting. It just doesn't fit this particular challenge. I think if we're doing a spell card challenge, this would be perfect. So anyway, I've got to hit those thoughts first. Anna, do want to give you a chance. What are some of your thoughts here as well?
Well, I had the same thoughts as you, Clint. I also checked, Ty did also submit his piece in the Discord, and he did it today. So today he did his first submission.
Okay.
So I say, Ty, put something up this weekend, sketch something, give us 2 or 3 more new compositions that are more following the description of the challenge. And I'll try to give you feedback on these again on Discord. And the other people in the group are super supportive, and they will help you with that. So be a little bit quicker with your submissions, then you have more time to adjust and change things.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So like this composition 3, I like the idea that he's standing in this stone hand coming out of the water. That's pretty cool. I like that. And he does his Kadis, his practice out there where he does his meditation out there on the palm of his hand that's reaching up. I'm good with that. We just don't want him utilizing or manifesting magic. Yeah, and especially if this thing looked all weathered, and it was kind of crumbly a little bit. And again, this is probably pulled out too far, where it now becomes far more about the environment than necessarily the character. So even on this, we can crop into more of that sort of frame, right? And getting rid of all this out there. But we can still have wind blowing. We can still make use of a lot of the fabrics blowing around. So that can still stay. Okay. I think we said about what we needed to cover there. Yeah, do what Anna says, which is just come up with another sketch. Actually, come up with a series of other sketches of how you might follow the direction in a different way. And then post them out there. We will try to make sure either she or someone else or myself will give you some feedback. Okay, this one is by Thomas, who wrote in a very small font. Hang on. I tend to sketch in values instead of doing line work. Oh yeah, I read this. So he has a slightly different process for how he generates his concept, and that's fine. He arrived where he needed to arrive. Last night I went to sleep last night feeling okay about these. Woke up this morning feeling like I didn't like any of it. So you just kind of went with your gut, painted over it to get to your big image. Yeah, I mean, I do the same thing. I feel like you sort of run the line between you've got this method workflow that you follow, but sometimes you just have to ditch that for a moment and just jump into it and kind of push your way through it real quick. And I like where you're going though. Yeah, I mean, actually, why don't you go first, Anna? Then I'll share some of my thoughts.
Yeah, there's not much I have here. I really like the all over atmosphere he created with a really cool and dark background. I like that he pulled off the darkness of the background without the background being super dark.
Yes.
So it feels gloomy and dark and a little bit stormy, like the storm just ended or something. But it's not dark, and I admire that. That's what I tried, but I failed.
No, guys, this is actually, Anna's got a good point here. This is a good example of an overcast sky where it's not necessarily at night. You know, it's not that kind of darkness. It's just very cloudy, and the colors are muted in the background. So if you wanted just a general direction, obviously don't do what he's doing exactly, but this is a good example of how to approach that well. Please go on.
Yeah, so I would say for the colors in the character, I would also ask you, Clint. I thought also about having a little bit orange or red or something in it. Would that be okay, or do you say no? I want it purely white gold because the description says white gold.
Yeah. Man, I was thinking like if you had some designs on the fabric that might be another color, just like a stitching color, or that one little band in the middle could be a different color. But I think that this main piece of red leather or fabric and the beads, they need to stay white or gold. Okay. Or make them something more earthy, like if the beads want to be made of stone, that's okay. Make them of glass, that's okay. Because neither one of those are really going to be interfering with the color scheme.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'd push the white. He looks a little bit yellow and not gold white to me. So I would, for example, have, for my own design, I will try to have brighter, cleaner whites. And then at the edges have like it was like real gold, so shiny, with some shiny edges, some reflections on it, so that it is like really looking a little bit like a gold seaming. That's what it's called. Maybe he could try something like that too. So at the moment it looks to me yellow, like a yellow red and not white gold. So I push that further. And the second thing is that his face reads to me a little bit more, maybe it's just subjective, but it reads to me a little bit more African than Asian at the moment. But yes, so these things can be super subjective. Clint, what do you say? Is this looking Asian to you? I'm just interested.
Yeah, I think you actually said something down here about a darker skin tone. Also, the skin tone is supposed to be a little dark. I wanted to play with this.
Yeah, there are Asian people with more darker skin tone, but still his nostrils are super white, his jaw is super white, his ears are coming to the front pretty much. So this is giving me a little bit more of an African look. So There is Asian
Yeah,
people with darker
I would
skin.
agree. As he has it sketched in currently, it is more African. If he does want to go with, I believe it's like Mongol are usually a little darker than like you would have Japanese or Chinese. From the little that I've looked, I had to draw one person that was Mongol. And so if he wants to go to the slightly more bronze side of it, that's fine. But do make sure that the bone structure, like particularly in the nose and the eyes and lips, are more Asian, standard Asian. Yeah, I think he just did a quick color on the fabrics that gave them a yellow, more of a yellow hue. And yeah, I would want to make sure that that's clear. It's white or it's gold, and not just necessarily like a really light yellowish. We'll assume he'll take care of that. Overall, I do like the design, the way the fabrics fit. The design of the character feels pretty good. I also like the mock-up over here on the left side of the 3D model, and it looks like he did some photo bashing of different clothes on top of it. And man, that's a good idea to approach it over there on both of these. And this one having the arm as a light source. Good information off of both of those. Good cropping on the scene. Okay, I did have some other thoughts. Let's see, what did I have? Oh yeah, it feels like the head is a bit too small. That because the neck feels long. I think if you just made the head a little bit bigger, that would feel better. Yeah, white, gold, already said that. And also perhaps lowering the horizon line a little bit, because I feel like we're looking up at him a bit more. Right now the horizon line's up here around his shoulder. But if we were to drop it near his waist, that might actually improve things. It'd allow you to move some of the mountains down back there a little bit so he feels a bit higher. And then we can curve that waist bit up a little more like you sit here. We do have a distinct curve up on that. And I think that feels pretty accurate over there. And over here, it's basically just flat, kind of flat across. So I'd be looking at curving that up slightly. And the other note was wanting some small pieces of fabric. It's like this, the red band right there that goes there. I'd put a knot there and just have the tails of that one to go off, right? And so you have some little ones breaking up the shape over there. And then I don't know if you intended that to be there or not, but I kind of like the idea that maybe he's got that tied and there's some little ties that come off the end there, and keeps the silhouette a little more interesting with those designs. Oh yeah, perhaps some designs, some faint designs that go along the fabric, some sort of patterns, just to give that second read a little layer of details that aren't much different than the normal cloth color, but if you pull it up full size and you look at it, you can actually make out maybe it has like images of cranes and water patterns or something like that on the fabric. That would be pretty neat. Oh, and then maybe some sort of magic effect. If it was me, I'd probably put some like little magic motes or something that sort of drift off of the arm, almost like, you know, firefly sort of thing as it drifts off, trails behind him. And that way, if you ever illustrated an image of him fighting, that, you know, you could have him punching and there would actually be this little trail of stuff that would follow the motion of what he's doing. Okay, and then, yeah, this, I was playing around, if you lowered that horizon and then you increased the light down here and you increase the amount of clouds down there so that this becomes brighter than that stand that he's on. Because right now they're actually getting pretty close. So I was looking at that. And then curving that up a little bit on the waist and a slight head size change there. and yeah, I'm gonna assume, Thomas, that you'll go back and add some more details and ridges and some little plants and stuff on the mountains behind him. I mean, that's just kind of refining stuff that's not real important to the scene. Yeah, that's my thoughts. I think it's going really well, and yeah, wish you the best with it.
Pretty cool piece. Looking forward to this one.
Yeah. Last one up is Travis. Okay, let's see. Travis says, turn my lovely roommate into something that doesn't hold up to her natural beauty again, but we do appreciate everybody that, helps out the artist. And, but at least it's not horror this time. That is true. Also, I know I went really far on this one for being a concept, but I had to do something to fill my streaming hours. Okay, so I get working on it. Very good chance I'll scrap this whole thing and redraw depending on what you have to say. No worries. It's not too precious to me. Okay. Well, how did this catch you, Anna? What are you thinking about this? Because, yeah, obviously he put in some time here, but he has a stream, and so he was, doing something on the stream.
That's always a thing that can be problematic for you guys if you go that far with the detail, and there is a lot of time in this piece, I can tell. But if we say now, no, just change everything, then you must do it really from the start again. And the more you pushed it in this stage, the less you will be wanting or willing to change many things. I know that I made the same mistake with challenges before. And when you hand something in where you think, just some little tweaks, and then I think it will be good, and then Clint comes up with, change this and that and this and that, and then I'm like overwhelmed and I feel demotivated because I put so much work into it, and I then also feel like and like I can't do anything, and then I'm super demotivated quickly. So
before I forget, my chat has stopped loading. So if somebody does have a question or a comment, if you would, and you see that, pass that on, and I'll try to address it.
I'm just a little bit bashing myself with Will. That's all that's going on in chat.
No, I mean, if somebody's commenting, I can't see it. It's not loading any new comments. So, yeah.
No, all good. You didn't miss anything.
Okay.
So about the piece itself. So I like the angle, and it's a good pose. It's not standing though, so I don't know whether Clint will say it's okay. It still fits his description. I'd say a standing pose is required, but well, that's second. The one thing that struck me a little bit in this piece was the sheer amount of super saturated colors that are not harmonizing very well, and it is super much into your face. It's super bright, it's super saturated, and I'd recommend pulling a lot of that back. I'm also a little bit confused by the direction of each light, because his arm is a light source, but there's also coming yellow light on his other arm that is not coming from the ethereal one, and also on his face there is yellow light, even though there is it's a bit confusing on his leg, and there are so many lights. There's a blue light coming from down. I think it's a little bit too much, a little bit too strong lights. They're not balanced out to each other. So usually you have one main stronger light source, and the others are more like fill lights. They're more subtle, and the more lights you put in, the less intense they must get. Otherwise you just get a piece that is super overexposed and bright from all directions and looking flat because there are no shadows anymore. So I'd have a good look on that again. For the design, I don't feel much monk. It's metal armor he's having there. I like that he has also this sun symbol thing going on. Like I also imagine for my piece, we are kind of like in this point. I was a bit confused that his hand is missing. It's supposed to be just made out of symbols, but it felt a little bit awkward to me. Could be cool design, but for my personal taste, I'd not choose it to be that way. That might be a taste thing, though. Yeah, so generally, my main concerns is about the lighting, the pose, and the colors, and this is where I stop. This is where I'm finished with my opinion.
Yeah, that's the major things, is that it's just getting out of the wheelhouse with the colors, and it's actually getting into the gaudy territory where you have straight orange, straight yellow, straight violet, straight pink. And it's all just a bit much, and I can't see this being acceptable on a Planeswalker card. There's no subtlety, there's no real realism here, and I think it was Travis. I apologize. Somebody asked me, "Hey, I was thinking of doing a pose where he's cross-legged and floating."
Yeah.
And I said, you know what, if you want to, go ahead. And so if that was Travis, then yeah, I'll accept the pose, because I said that, and that's fine if he wants to.
He wrote that just in chat.
Yeah.
He just said that you already.
So I'm okay with that, and I think the pose reads pretty well. I follow that. But
yeah.
Okay, and the other thing is, all right, Travis, you said I had to do something to fill streaming hours, so I kept working on it. You didn't have to. You could have done more studies. You didn't have to pick one and just spend another, 2 dozen hours on it. You could actually go, okay, well, I'm going to make my concept better before I commit to it. I'm going to do more variations in my concept. I'm going to do more color studies. I'm going to do some studies from other Planeswalker cards and learn from them to apply them to this. Just getting a concept and working it up and saying it, oh, well, I had to because it was a stream. No, you didn't. You could do anything on stream. It's your stream. And the best thing would have been to do more studies to figure out what would work better. So just kind of talking time-wise, there was a better choice there. I think we've got to give him more human fingers. I get that he's got the arm is basically the glowing tattoo pattern, but the fact that the fingers become triangles, it's just a little too odd. So let's give him more humanoid hands. And then we want to find a reference for the lighting and the colors. There is, it's like this, okay, I want this lighting. Okay, fine, that's good, have that. But what is more beneficial is having a reference for how the lighting affects the character. Right? In which case, if we were actually thinking through it, here, let's do this. Let's do a little study here. You get that? I'm gonna move it over here. I'm gonna go like this. We're gonna scale it up. Boom. Go like this. I'm now going to put a mask on it and then inverse the mask. And now I'm going to paint the background in. I'm going to use white. And go, oh, he's just photo bashing. Yes, fine, we're doing a concept. We want to see the direction that it should go. So this gives us a better sense of what the colors actually would look like. This is more realistic. It's more of what MTG would expect. Now we get to the interesting bit. Look what color the ground is. See, when you backlight the ground under that condition, the ground becomes very warm and silhouetted. So we need to do basically the same thing. Now I can get another layer, and if you want to continue that, it's actually going to be about like this. And yeah, okay, so he can go change it to the shape of his mountain. I mean, it's not that hard. So we put the mountain up there like that. Put another mountain over here. Okay, close enough. That'll work. And then on him, same sort of thing. We're going to put a darken layer. I'm going to put it at high opacity. And we're going to pick that same dark, sort of reddish violet tone. And then he also would be basically silhouetted. Now, if you wanted to treat it so that there's more burn of the light around him so he shows up, okay, cool. We'll place the light in such a way that he can have that light coming out from around him. Give him that effect. But this really has to stay pretty much silhouetted if there's that bright light there. And some of this could get, frankly, pretty dark. It's kind of going to be... I know it's white fabric, but it's being super backlit and silhouetted. And then you've got the gold light there. So, okay, this fly is trying to annoy me. So if you wanted to use bright colors, you can do that, but at least let's try to use a more realistic approach to what it would look like. And then we can come in and start adding in, you know, your other light sources and say, all right, well, we've got this kind of cool light from the sky up here, and then we can start applying some of that up there as well. But we want it, again, like toned down so it meshes in with the silhouette and doesn't break the silhouette up too much. But even that, like I even played around with what if you went like on the more realistic, like moody background and comp some background in like that. And
don't forget about the Stormy Sky.
Yeah, and that's what I did with this other comp. And so like this is a Stormy version, and then you could just have him. You need to adjust his lighting to match a lighting that's more like this. And then the gold can be the primary color. That gold glow is like, it's almost discordant, right? It can be practically a discordant color scheme where it's almost all grays except for this one color, which is gold. And that could be a really kind of cool dynamic piece. We do need to see a change on the character design though, because monks, not really full metal breastplate torso wearers. It's just not a thing for fantasy monks. They just don't wear big metal chest pieces. Paladins, yeah, that's a thing. But not really monks. It's all fabrics. It's like a little accessory. It's like a shoulder piece. It's a hip protection. It's a forearm guard. That sort of thing. It's not an entire chest. So if we want the shoulder piece, okay, cool. You want a metal piece there around the buckle area? Okay, cool. But this is all fabric. All right. Okay, I threw a lot out there. Anything catch your eye or anything you want to toss on top of that, Anna?
No, pretty good. I like the ideas.
Okay. That's the guy from Mortal Kombat, right? Man, it's been ages since I've seen that, but that character reference? I think so.
Never watched it.
Okay, so compositionally, I think it's working pretty well. Yeah, I think Travis knows kind of where to go with it. Maybe he was just having fun with it. He wanted to play around with that color scheme. It is a fun color scheme to work with, going all the bright colors and bright violets and greens and blues and stuff. But right now, let's shift it back to MTG. Shift it back to being a bit more realistic, more moody, a bit more fabrics as well. So I think that was it. Yes. Okay, so going forwards, we probably had some people wondering, how do I get an art challenge? In order to get feedback on a challenge, you do have to purchase a ticket. They are $20. You get feedback twice. You have 4 weeks to do the challenge, 2 weeks, submit in your concept, get feedback. 2 weeks later, you submit the final, and you get feedback then as well. The tickets go on sale on the swatchesart.com store. It's a Gumroad store. And they go on sale the Saturday, the day following when a Group 1's challenge ends, which would be next Friday/Saturday. Any more comments? Anything to wrap up this stream that I might have forgot?
Yeah, no, just for those who came in later, don't forget about joining the art club if you're interested in improving. And this weekend, I hope tomorrow, maybe on Sunday, I will post the new assignment for the coming week. And yeah, it's a pretty cool group. We have also some audio sessions together where we exchange our experiences from it. So it's a very nice study group by now. So if you're interested, come over and join us.
Are you submitting images as well?
For the challenge? Yeah, I always give an example first.
Cool.
I do it first, yeah.
No, you're also going to be working on your piece over the next 2 weeks as well?
I'm super busy, yeah. I'm doing this, the art club, my normal daily life, and I'm still trying to work also on the Dryad. Still. Busy.
Okay, we'll wrap it up there. Appreciate everybody for joining us. If you have questions about any of this, if you've enjoyed it, feel free. Leave a comment here on the YouTube channel. And come join us on Discord, on the Facebook group. And I will continue working on the Patreon stuff. And I will catch you next week. So, until then, keep drawing. There